Okay, so this week I'd like to share a personal story with all of you in hopes that it will help many of you who may be going through the exact same thing. So some of you who follow me on Instagram may know that this time last year I was actually fresh out of the hospital on bed rest, recovering from a major surgery. For years, I lived with intense, debilitating, and shooting pain. I endured extremely heavy periods, and despite my best working out effort, I had a constantly protruding stomach. After hours in an emergency room one day, convincing doctors that there was actually something wrong with me, I discovered that what I was dealing with was not so uncommon at all. Just like more than 25 million other women, I had fibroid tumors. I thought if I could live with these tumors, maybe the pain would go away, but it never did. So what got me to finally address this issue that was draining me? Vanity. Around 2 years ago, I began to lose my hair. It was falling out in clumps. I even started taking pictures of myself when I woke up to document my hair loss. I knew it had to be fibroids because my mother had actually gone through the same thing. And so, like any good journalist, I began to research. And when I read about the disproportionate impact fibroids have on Black women, I was shocked. So it was important to me that I have a Black woman doctor. Dr. Lynn Lightfoot told me that she could perform my surgery. She could cut around the fibroids, which were on my uterus, and if I wanted to have kids, I'd better go out there and get pregnant as soon as possible and then have another surgery. Or they could remove my uterus entirely and the fibroids and painful periods would be gone. But so too would my ability to carry children. So I was already over 40, I wasn't married, and I had never met this baby I was supposed to have. So was I to live with pain, go bald, and slice my body in half twice? I made the decision that was best for me and opted to have a full hysterectomy. Comfortable with my decision, I was ready for surgery. But there was only one problem. I had no steady job. I was in the middle of auditioning for this show, if you guys remember, and I had no steady income. Despite the perception that everyone who appears on TV is wealthy, I will let you know I was not paid a dime for appearing on any network then. And I had no health insurance. So like many of you, I was ill with very few options. So I looked into paying out of pocket. Maybe I could dig in my savings, gather some coins, but not quite. This type of surgery and the stay in the hospital was going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars that I just didn't have. And that's where Obamacare came in. I signed up, and the day it went into effect was the same day I had my surgery. And this, my friends, gave me an entirely new appreciation for how important covering pre-existing conditions are to so many of you out there. So for those who are squeamish, now would be a good time to look away. But I want you to see the size of the fibroid tumors doctors removed so you have an understanding of what I was dealing with. I was carrying that around for years. I stayed in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks under the great care of Dr. Lightfoot and my medical team. And after a few weeks, I was mobile. And after a few months, I was sitting in this very chair launching this very show. So here we are a year later, and I've had countless conversations with women across the country who are in physical pain and mental anguish, as this issue impacts millions of us is rarely discussed. That is, until now. When we come back, I'll be joined by the real MVP, Miss Wanda Durant, mother of NBA superstar Kevin Durant, and a doctor to talk about symptoms and answer all the questions you all may have. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So in the last segment, you saw I revealed my own battle with fibroids, which most women will experience by the age of 50. And studies have shown that Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to have fibroids, encounter symptoms at younger ages, and are more likely to be treated with hysterectomies compared with our white counterparts. Joining me now, Dr. Simi Hawkins of the Fibroid and Pelvic Wellness Center of Georgia, and the real MVP, Miss Wanda Durant, an inspirational speaker who's been very open about her battle with fibroids as well. She also happens to be the mother of NBA superstar Kevin Durant and the founder of the Wanda Durant Real MVP Foundation. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. Dr. Simi, I want to start with you because this is something that we don't get to talk about a lot. It's rarely discussed in a public setting, yet it's impacted so many women. Now, for me, I talked about my hair was falling out in clumps, which was terrifying to me. It has since grown back and is still growing back. But But there are many symptoms of fibroids that some women may not even know this is what's bothering them. So walk us through what women should be looking for and how they know this is something that they should address immediately.
Absolutely. So one of the most common symptoms of fibroids is heavy menstrual bleeding. It's kind of what you hear in the news. Everyone's talking about the anemia and the fatigue that comes with it. But fibroids can cause a array of symptoms. Some women will only notice that their abdomen is a little bit larger than it used to be. Like you said, they are working out, they're trying to get their abdomen flat and it won't. Or they may have back pain. Back pain, there's so many causes of it, but fibroids can impact things like pelvic pain, back pain, pain with intercourse. And then some women have extremely subtle symptoms. They may just have a change in their discharge. And I don't want everyone to run out and say they have fibroids if they have that, but those are one of the symptoms not talked about. And then some silent symptoms like infertility.
So, Ms. Wanda, you and I talked before about some of the things you experienced, and I was so moved by your emotional testimony because not only did you have fibroids, but you had other challenges as well, and you talked about what it felt like that as Black women, our bodies are not prioritized, our health issues are not brought to the front and center as they should be. Talk about what you went through with fibroids.
Yes, as we discussed last week, I had just recently been diagnosed with fibroids. But over the years, I had all of the symptoms of fibroids, but never was fibroids considered until about a year and a half ago. My African-American doctor suggested that I get a scan. And then the scan showed that I had fibroids. But over the years, I had those symptoms, but because I'm in menopause now, the fibroids have shrunk because of low estrogen and progesterone, which is normal in menopause. But it really is alarming to me that I had so many symptoms. I had hair loss, I had heavy menstrual cycles, I had fatigue, and hair loss, as I mentioned, and it was never considered. And so that really bothered me once I realized that fibroids could have possibly been the reason for all of that.
And, you know, because it's not discussed a lot, we don't always recognize those symptoms as fibroids. Dr. Hawkins, I will tell you, I had a scar as a result of the hysterectomy, and I was so shamed about it and self-conscious about it. And how I knew this problem was so prevalent is because, you know, when other women, I would talk to them, they'd say, oh, let me see your scar. Look at my scar. And it was like everybody had this scar. So because it's so common, the treatment is also questionable, right? So why are so many Black women treated with hysterectomies when there are clearly other options? I made the choice that was best for me, but some women do not want to go that route, and yet they feel like that's their only option.
Yeah, and a lot of that lays on the healthcare provider. I will say that we should take full ownership and not, unfortunately, sometimes providing women, especially Black women. There are studies that have looked at this with minimally invasive options, meaning could we have done this laparoscopically instead of having such a scar as the one that you're saying that you had, or do they have other options altogether? There are options now to shrink fibroids. Of course, there are options to just remove them or do what's called an embolization. So a lot of times that is the responsibility of the healthcare providers to let you know. Unfortunately, the truth is a lot of providers will feel like a hysterectomy is just an easier route to go.
That is unfortunate. And Ms. Wanda, I think you brought up something really important, and that's being menopausal while going through fibroids, which those symptoms may take on an entirely, different look when you're menopausal. Talk about what it's like going through fibroids, also going through menopause. Did it exacerbate, hot flashes? Did it impact, your mood? Just explain what you're going through.
I would say yes. The hot flashes are on 100, I must say. And gosh, it's hard to deal with. And it has affected me. My hair recently just started falling out and thinning out, and I had really thick hair. So that's been, my doctor told me that's a possible symptom of fibroids. And as we discussed with the Black Women's Health and Heritage Roundtable last week, there are symptoms during menopause that sometimes are attributed to other conditions. Like I have thyroid issues, I have some other health issues, and some of the symptoms have been attributed to that. And as I said earlier, it was never brought to my attention that it could possibly be fibroids. And so now I am really researching some of the symptoms that I'm going through and the correlation with other illnesses along with my doctor to see in fact, if I should take the next step and have surgery. I don't want to get a hysterectomy, even though I'm in menopause. That's just a part of my womanhood that I just don't want to let go so easily. And so we're coming up with some different ideas of what we're going to do next. And so I'm now in the process of figuring out how we're going to deal with the fibroids.
Well, keep us posted. We definitely want to keep up with your health, Miss Wanda. And Dr. Hawkins, a lot of people, my friend Brittany Packnett-Cunningham says we should have a book on what to expect when you're aging, the same way we do and what to expect when you're pregnant, because what we go through in our bodies, it's constantly changing each decade, it's felt like for me. But for women who, saw my testimony and they're like, oh, no way, I don't want to be in the hospital for weeks. Sometimes people are in the hospital for hours. It's not even an overnight surgery, so everybody's different. But can you talk about what impact fibroids may have on fertility? Because for people who are younger and do want children, they may have a lot of questions about the best treatment for them.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that comes to a lot of women's mind as soon as they find out their diagnosis is their fertility, especially if they may have been asymptomatic. A lot of women find out about their fibroids when they're pregnant. They find out with their first ultrasound, which leads me to the point that you can get pregnant with fibroids. A lot of times it depends on the location and that symptomatology and your ability to try to get pregnant. Unfortunately, there's also that subset of women who have a very difficult time getting pregnant with fibroids, again, because of that location. Location is what matters. And I always encourage women to partner with their primary GYN physician as well as a reproductive endocrinology physician, a subspecialist in here to say, okay, do these fibroids need to be removed? Is it okay and healthy for me to get pregnant with fibroids? Am I looking at an increased risk of things like miscarriage and preterm labor and preterm delivery? Because we don't know how to predict exactly affected.
All right. Well, I'm so thankful to you guys for having this conversation. Like I said, everybody's different. I had 5 grapefruit-sized fibroids that had to be removed. Some people have smaller, more, less. So everybody's different. Please talk to your healthcare professionals. And thank you, Dr. Hawkins and Miss Wanda, for being here. And Miss Wanda, good luck to you. We'll keep in touch with you on your health as you go forward. Thank you, ladies.